Hey everyone. Today we're going to, or this week I should say, we're going to focus on the 1950s, which is a great decade for most Americans. There's some groups that don't have as great of a decade, but traditionally the 50s are seen as kind of a period of economic boom, and for the most part a really fantastic decade. So today we're going to spend a little time just kind of focusing on what the 50s was kind of all about. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first problem that we had to kind of deal with is that during World War II we had 13 million military people fighting in the war. And when the war was over, obviously 13 million people were gonna come on back. And so the major concern was, what do we do with these 13 million people? How are they going to find work? How are they going to transition to basically peacetime America? I mean, so people were really concerned about how we were going to take care of these soldiers, how we were going to find them all these jobs, what were they going to do, how were we going to, how were we going to move on? Because remember, that the Great Depression ended when World War II started, and so there's still a lot of uneasiness about the economy and kind of how things were going to go. But one of the great things that happens for the returning soldiers of World War II is that they passed the Congress and the President passed the GI Bill, and this is something that's still around today. If you have any family members that are in the military, they kind of have this advantage. But basically, what the GI Bill does is it gives returning soldiers a year of unemployment benefits, so it gives them time to kind of find a job. It also gives them basically money to go to college, which is huge, and it also gives them cheap loans to build homes. So they get really low interest rates, and it's really cheap for them to go ahead and buy a home. All right, and this really lays the foundation for a fantastic decade because number one, whenever you have lots of educated people, they usually create, oops, sorry about that. I don't know what the heck that is, but I'm sorry. But usually when you have a lot of smart, educated people, whether it's tech school or universities, I mean, those are people that are productive members of society. They create things, they help produce things, and that creates economic prosperity. And so the fact that you have all these young people going to college, that is a fantastic thing. Okay? In addition to that, because it's so easy for these returning soldiers to build new homes, there are lots and lots of jobs that are created as a result of all these new homes. I mean, you think about it. Whenever there's a new home that is built, okay, that means it means there are construction workers, electricians, carpenters, plumbers, painters, roofers. All those people have jobs, including the people that make the building materials. I mean, so when the housing market is good, the economy typically is doing well as well because there's so much that goes into building a new home. And that's one of the things we're noticing nowadays is that our economy is kind of slow to recover, mainly because the housing market is struggling to kind of recover as well. There's a lot of people like electricians, carpenters, plumbers, they're maybe suffering a little bit because the economy is kind of lagging by. All right, so in the 50s, we see all these new homes being built. All right, also during the post-World War II age, we have basically almost a period of 20 years where there are lots and lots of babies being born. Okay, it's kind of weird to talk about, but you have all these men that are in World War II. They were away from their girlfriends, their wives, and when they came home, it was on. They were gonna start their families, and start their families they did. In fact, today there are 78 million Americans who are baby boomers. So basically, people who are in their 50s and 60s. I mean, those are people that are considered the boomers. All right, and they account for about 26% of our population. Okay, so during this post-World War II era, there are a lot of babies being born. Okay, in addition to all those babies being born, we also have a kind of a new kind of culture that pops up in America that I'm sure many of you really dig, and that's the car. The car really becomes a part of American culture in the 50s. Okay, if you're ever going to a car show, the 50s cars, the big muscle cars, I mean, they're always really cool to kind of look at. There's a couple of pictures of some muscle cars right there. But basically, cars kind of revolutionize the American way of life. Okay, because most Americans have cars, it allows people to branch out, live farther away from where they work instead of living in the crowded city. So you see, look on the left there, that picture shows a really crowded city. In Europe, obviously, because you can see the license plates are kind of funky looking. But if you don't have a lot of transportation, it's really difficult to live far away from where you work. But one of the great things about America is that people can live 20, 30, 40 miles away from where they work and just drive there. And so suburbs pop up. So you have these big cities, and then around the cities, you have these gigantic suburbs. And that kind of goes with even Milwaukee. If you look at Milwaukee, maybe some of your parents even work in Milwaukee. But around Milwaukee, you have suburbs like Mequon, New Berlin, Brookfield, Brown Deer, Greenfield, Greendale, Franklin. All these suburbs that kind of popped up around the city, and that's because many people can still work in Milwaukee, but they don't want to live there. So, car kind of helped it with that. Also because of the car, we have drive-ins, drive-in movie theaters, which are kind of gone now, but they used to be kind of a cool thing. Also, you have drive-through restaurants. I mean, all these cool things because of the car. In addition to that, because the car became such an important thing, President Eisenhower in the 50s decided to build the interstate highway. And so 41,000 miles of highway was built in the 50s. Now, this is also incredibly important because, number one, it takes a lot of people to build roads. And so because of you're building all this interstate freeway, you're going to have a lot of people who are employed. Okay. Also, now that you have the interstate freeway, people can go ahead and travel the country, and tourism picks up, and people start going on road trips. And hopefully, I think it's important that every American family goes on a road trip or two. That thing where it's just basically a huge pain in your butt, and everyone's hot and sweaty. Everyone's kind of crowded in the back of the car. That's kind of an American experience, an American rite of passage. Okay. So the interstate highway system was created in the 50s, and that was obviously a very, very important thing. Led to a lot of economic prosperity. In fact, here, if you look at this map here, you can see all the freeways that were built in the 50s, and more have been added on, obviously, in the decades following. But you can see, there's Highway 43, Highway 45, 94 for us, so freeways that we're very familiar with. If you've ever gone to Florida, you can kind of track your route down there. So this interstate freeway system really kind of connected the United States. It's kind of funny, before we had freeways, or highways, whatever you want to call them, they were basically like just dirt roads connecting, states and cities and stuff like that. So it wasn't really easy to get around. So anyways, this is a very important thing. Here's some more, just shows you some more freeways that we have now. So the blue ones are the main ones that built in the 50s, and the red ones are roads that have been added since. So you can see that we really have lots and lots of roads, except Alaska and Hawaii. But anyways, other important things about the 50s is that a lot of people moved into the southern states. So places like California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida. People start kind of flocking to the southern states. We see a lot of people going there, mainly because there's air conditioning now. I'm sure some of you right now are enjoying the air condition. But without air conditioning, the South would be pretty darn hot. But also there's lots and lots of jobs in the South. There's oil jobs, there's space jobs, there's lots of defense industries down there. And so people are just flocking to these southern states because there's so much economic prosperity. Okay? And because of that, there's also going to be a major shift in political power, because now there's more people in the southern states. There's going to be more representation in Congress. Okay? So anyways, America's economy, because of the GI Bill, because of this car culture, because of the interstate highway system, the American economy is just rocking and rolling. Okay? Here's a cool stat for you. Americans made up just 6% of the world's population back in the 50s, but they made half of the world's products. Okay? And that is astounding. That shows you just how powerful the American economy was back in the 50s. Okay? It was also an amazing decade because there were tons and tons of culture. Okay, rock and roll exploded onto this scene. Okay, rock and roll has its origins in rhythm and blues, which is primarily an African American kind of style of music. Okay, and so you really had these African American musicians like Chuck Berry, who basically started this rock and roll craze. And then you have other famous Americans like Elvis Presley, who was probably the most famous musician in American history. He was a sex symbol. He was very controversial. He's just a great American story. Unfortunately, he died of an overdose, like too many other musicians do. But just a fantastic example of rock and roll. All right. And here's a picture of him doing his dance. Actually, this dance is kind of funny now when you look at like what's on MTV, and if you think of some of the videos that we see today, like some of the Katy Perry videos, or LMFAO and stuff like that. This what we're seeing right now in this picture. this hip gyration that he did was actually banned from TV because it was too, I don't know, what's with this stupid thing, sorry about that. His little hip gyration that he's doing here was actually considered to be too provocative, and so when he was on TV, they would sometimes only videotape him from the waist up so that you couldn't see his hip gyrations. So if you kind of think of like the stuff we see on like MTV or YouTube today, it's kind of funny how far we've come as far as what we're willing to tolerate on the airwaves. So, anyways,